Boa tarde, domingo especial, mega especial. Acho que é um domingo mais histórico das nossas vidas do Heavy Culture. Estamos aqui numa live com o nosso querido Tom Gabriel Warrior. Welcome, Tom!
Thank you for having me.
Bem-vindo, Mog Records, Maurício. Bem-vindo, Christian. Tá? Vamos fazer desse momento aqui um momento especial. Vamos conversar com o Tom, saber como é que estão as novidades sobre Triptykon, sobre o Triumph of Death. Pessoal, participe no chat. E era isso. Vamos lá, Christian.
Okay, so, well, first of all, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. We are very pleased to have your presence here, obviously. Very happy to, as fans and great admirer of the band. And I speak for the audience in Brazil, so people in Brazil are really happy to have your presence here. The first question is about the things with Triptykon and your projects. How are they doing now with this pandemic situation, and how are you facing this?
Well, the pandemic is not really inspiring, is it? To be sitting at home, not to play any concerts, not to meet any of our friends, not to meet our audience, and hardly ever rehearse as a band. To me, that's not very inspiring, unfortunately, even though there's plenty of time now. But we all also live from the impressions we get from traveling, from meeting our friends. If you're totally cut off for 1.5 years, it's not very inspiring. However, having said all of this, the new album is planned. We released our last album last year, but it was a live album. Of course, everybody wants a new studio album, and we're actually working on this. And I very much hope to release new music next year for Triptykon.
Great. Well, speaking in Portuguese here a little bit. Bom, a pandemia para ele não está sendo nem um pouco legal, né? Porque ele não pode ver os amigos, não está podendo ensaiar direito, né? Não dá para tocar, não está sendo muito inspiradora, não, apesar de o Triptykon já estar com um álbum aí engatilhado, né? Pretendem lançar ano que vem. Lançaram o ao vivo, né, ano passado. Então, tipo, tá lenta a coisa um pouco, assim, porque essa pandemia ela afetou legal, assim, não tá muito inspirada, assim, ela não é uma situação inspiradora, assim, desse lado, assim. Vamos lá, então? Go on.
Well, that's pretty much it. There's a number of other projects that I'm working on, not directly connected to Triptykon.
Great to hear
that. As far as Triptykon is concerned, of course, we hope to play a reasonable number of concerts next year. But right now, I don't know how it is in Brazil, but in Europe, the situation with COVID is getting out of control again. And
yes.
So all the plans that we've all been making with our management, our concert agency right now are very much up in the air. We don't really know what it's going to look like next year, but it is planned to play a significant amount of concert next year.
Yes, great.
My guess is as good as yours.
Yes. Okay, gonna say it in Portuguese here, and then George is gonna ask a question. Ele fala aí que essa pandemia tá atrapalhando até os shows pro ano que vem, né? Porque lá tá tendo uma situação meio que estranha ainda, né? Tá começando tem um lado que tá voltando de novo. E também que ele tem outros projetos fora o Triptykon, que não são ligados com o Triptykon também, né? Mas ele acredita que ano que vem, né? Se tudo der certo, o Triptykon tá tocando. Não tem nada agendado pro Brasil ainda, né? Mas já tem uns shows que estão agendados e que eles estão vendo ainda com a situação por causa desse semi-retorno da pandemia, assim. Jorge, pode perguntar aí.
Ele falou sobre o novo álbum do Triptykon. Tem alguma coisa inspirada, assim, nesse momento mundial? Enfim, o que a gente pode esperar desse disco pesado, melancólico?
Okay, George is asking about the new Triptykon album, like if it has anything to do about pandemic, like the feelings, if it is linked to something heavier, sadness, grief, everything that we expected to listen to.
No, I think for me personally that would be a bit too simple. You know, I don't go to the cinema and come out and write a song about it, and then the pandemic
Yeah.
happens, but I don't like think, oh, I have to write something about the pandemic. The things that I contribute to Triptychon, I can only speak about myself, of course. The things that I contribute to Triptychon are very much based on my life, my emotions, my thinking, which of course I'm 58 years old, so by now
Yeah.
that's quite a significant amount of life, and it's just based on the last 5 minutes of my life. And
Great.
the world as I perceive it right now is very much falling apart in so to speak. And of course I have my thoughts about this, and it affects
Yes.
my emotions, it affects my thinking. I'm quite sure it's going to affect the music in some way. But I always try to direct this in a very artistic direction.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, music to me is art, and that art is something very sacred, and it
Yes.
takes a lot. It takes a lot of work to do something good.
Yeah, you
I
can.
don't know any secret recipe. Art to me is something difficult. It takes a lot of work, a lot of focus. So by the
Yes.
time a song is finished, there's so many things that go into it, so many emotions, so many details, so much work.
Yes.
It's got 1,000 influences.
Great. Gonna give the audience the information here. Bom, ele falou que ele não é o tipo de cara que costuma ir ao cinema e já sair escrevendo uma letra. Para ele é bem difícil porque ele vê isso como um contexto mais artístico, assim. Então, tipo, essa parte do Triptychon é mais ligado com o lado emocional dele, falando por ele, assim, a parte que ele contribui com o Triptychon, né? Ele já tá com 58 anos, que nem ele falou ali, então já tem uma visão de vida diferente também, né? E claro que a pandemia também afeta um pouco a maneira que tu sente, tu vê as coisas, mas não tem nada ligado a isso, assim, mas no sentido de sentimento mesmo, assim, como tu não poder ver as pessoas, coisa e tal, e para ele a arte é sagrada, e a música é que nem a arte, então não é uma coisa que tem uma fórmula, que tu chega ali, escreva e tá pronta, ele tem essa coisa assim, ele como artista também, né, não é só músico, ele também é artista, escultor, não me engano. You work with sculptures, right?
Excuse me?
You work with sculptures, right?
You
Sculpting
mean
things.
my own sculptures?
Yes, like art.
Yes, I've done a number of death masks of myself and some other small sculptures,
Yes.
and I'm actually in the process of being a little more active at this. I felt for a
Great.
while I had hit a wall, and I didn't want to endlessly repeat myself, so I took a break from this for a few years.
Great.
But I'm actually planning on doing some new sculptures, and I will just see where it's going to go. It's not something that is endlessly serious to me.
Yes.
I don't think I'm a great artist. It's just something I like to do,
Yes.
and I'll see. I'll do a few new ones and see how it's going, and then you'll either hear of it or you won't.
Yeah. Thank you. Ele fazia escultura, né? Faz tempo que ele não faz, agora ele tá voltando com os projetos aí. Não que ele pretenda fazer algo muito grande, assim, né? Mas ele gosta, tipo, é parte do lazer dele. Então, tipo, nem eu falei, ele é ligado com a música, ele é artista, ele é músico, então tem essa coisa, assim, da inspiração, né? Como tu funciona, assim. Fala, Maurício.
Pessoal, vou perguntar ao Tom sobre uma coisa que eu gosto de perguntar, sempre a trajetória musical dele, como começou, quais a sequência, como foi, do Celtic Frost, do Hellhammer. Vamos ver o que ele vai responder. Tom, I have been interviewing people on my Instagram. I make some interviews, and some artists, they don't care about talking about the past. But as a musician, could you describe me chronologically how you started, how were involved into music the first time and with the bands? Not just a brief, just to have to explain all. For example, what was the first band? When did you really got into music and so on?
Mm-hmm. Well, first things first. To me, the past is very important. I do live in the presence, of course, and I very much embrace the present, embrace technical advances and so on. But I at the same time, I think the past is something very important, and it defines who you are, and it's very dangerous to forget the past.
Yeah.
And that's why I am in touch with the present and I'm in touch with the past. So I have really no problem delving back into it. My very first band was a tiny little band I had at the end of school called Grave Hill that existed not even for a year. And it was, of course, heavily influenced by the new wave of British heavy metal. But we couldn't really play so well at the time, so it never got to that level. And I was always trying to make the band heavier, and in the end, my friends in that band thought it was too extreme, and the band fell apart. And from the remnants of that band, I formed Hellhammer to play much heavier music. So that was in 1981. I formed Grave Hill, and in May 1982, I formed Hellhammer.
And Hellhammer was the first thing that really got you on the stage. Did you play any gig with Grave Hill?
No, there was no concerts with Grave Hill. We only had a few songs. It was simply our first experiences as with our instruments, and it was learning how to do it, learning how to rehearse, learning how to use equipment, learning how to use instruments, all these things.
It was a very beginning.
The first band that really had professional ambitions and put much more time into it to achieve a professional level was Hellhammer, where we really we took a giant step in Hellhammer. We even though it was still very basic music, but we rehearsed.
Ok. Pessoal, ele falou que a primeira banda dele chamou Grave Hill, lá no comecinho, e eles não tinham muita condição de tocar, porque eram muito novinhos. Depois, realmente, a banda que realmente começou a botar ele na música foi o Hellhammer. So, Tom, can you resume for me what was Hellhammer for you overall this time? Was the first band that put you on the stage, or was it really landmark in your life as a musician? Or just a phase, a teenager, you understand? What was Hellhammer for you?
First and foremost, Hellhammer was our own world. We created our own little universe in Hellhammer. Most of us in Hellhammer had difficult circumstances at home, difficult youth for various reasons. And it was a time of political turmoil in Switzerland, especially the establishment against the young generation. And we had problems with our teachers, we had problems with our parents, and so on. So what we did in Hellhammer was basically create our own little universe, meeting with people that understood us, that were like us, young people. We formed a band, and we had a little road crew, and we had friends that came to the rehearsal sessions. And first and foremost, it was just like our little rebellion against the world that we lived in. And of course, this led us to play extreme music.
I see. So, pessoal, ele está falando que nesse momento do Hellhammer era a banda que a Suíça estava vivendo um momento político difícil.
Maurício, só faz a pergunta em português, por favor, que você só para o pessoal entender o contexto.
Pessoal, eu perguntei para ele antes o que foi o Hellhammer na vida dele, né? O que significou o Hellhammer? Ele falou que o Hellhammer foi a primeira banda que realmente se colocou no palco, mas a Suíça estava vivendo um momento muito político difícil. Ele tinha os problemas em casa também, era problemas da juventude, aquela coisa efervescente da juventude, ok? Posso fazer mais uma pergunta?
Mas o Christian depois volta, vamos fazer o rodízio.
Depois eu volto com outras perguntas. Vai lá, Christian.
Okay,
Tom, thank you.
So I have a question about Two Megatherian, about an iconic art painting. Like Satan One is an iconic painting, and for me, as like most people, related to blasphemy and things like that. And in my interpretation, I think Master Giger was mocking Christian religion, where Satan is actually the church and Christ as a slingshot is a weapon against those who don't believe in their God. I would like to know your reading, your opinion about the painting, and if Master Giger told you his interpretation of this painting is a curiosity.
Well, Martin Arcane and I saw it exactly the same way as you just described it, which is, of course, why we love the painting. When we started working together in Hellhammer and then later Celtic Frost, we discovered that we were both huge admirers of H.R. Giger, and we looked at his books a million times together. We spent entire nights dissecting his books, discussing his art and everything, and we saw the impact of Satan 1 exactly the way you described it, which is why we asked Giger whether we could work with this. And you're right. Many years later, Giger actually confirmed that the painting was intended that way.
Great.
Giger has had a very large library of books about religion, history, occult, and of course all these things probably manifested themselves through his art. And he had, of course, a very cynical look at religion.
Great. I'm going to give the information to the audience here. Bom, eu perguntei para ele sobre a capa do Megatherium, para quem não sabe, se chama Satã 1, né? Na minha concepção, assim, desde a primeira vez que eu vi a capa, para mim aquilo era uma tiração de sarro com a religião cristã, né? O Satã simplesmente é a Igreja Católica e Cristo, como uma forquilha ali, representa uma arma contra aqueles que não acreditam. O Tom confirmou que ele e o Martin têm a mesma visão, né? Eles escolheram a capa por causa desse choque. Quando eles descobriram o Giger, eles dissecaram a arte do Giger, eles eram fanáticos, passavam horas e horas vendo os livros, eram frustrados. Então, quando ele entrou em contato, né, eles queriam essa arte justamente por esse choque que o Satan 1, né, o Satã 1 ali, dava. E realmente, ele também tem essa ideia de que né, ele teve a mesma impressão que eu tive, né? Aquilo ali ele está tirando, né, onda com a hipocrisia cristã. E mais tarde o Giger veio a confirmar ele que sim, né? Ele tinha uma enorme livraria sobre ocultismo, sobre religiões, e ele confirma que sim, tipo, olha, eu estava realmente tirando sarro da religião católica, não era uma coisa tão blasfêmica assim como as pessoas têm na mente, assim, não, era uma capa mais crítica mesmo, um ponto de vista mais crítico mesmo. Né? Fico feliz de eu ter acertado a interpretação. Pode falar, Jorge.
Eu vou fazer uma aqui em relação, já que estamos falando em obras, né? Eu sempre tive curiosidade para saber qual é a maior obra, a melhor obra que ele acha que ele criou, né? Qual que ele tem mais orgulho, né? Se tem uma ou duas, enfim.
Well, George is asking about your works, okay, like the bands. Like, which is your favorite album, or which one do you consider your greatest work?
Oh, Jesus Christ, that's very, very, very difficult.
Your masterpiece.
Well, number one, I think it's very inappropriate if I have to select a masterpiece.
You can do that. You can do that. No one else. You can.
Yeah, but you know, I would never speak of my own music as a masterpiece. I'm trying to be.
We'll give you the right. Okay, today you can. Only today. Okay.
I'm trying to be realistic, but look, it's very difficult because I've been granted, because of the audience, I've been granted to be in 3 bands that have become very important to me: Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, Triptychon, and in each of these bands there was some moments that have been hugely important for my life. So it's very difficult for me to select one album.
One thing, yeah.
But I mean, if I had to, maybe Celtic Frost's first album, Morbid Tales, was of course hugely important because it started so many things. But on the other hand, the first Triptychon album was also very important because it it meant I could survive artistically after Celtic Frost fell apart.
Yes.
Or an album like Monotheist, the last Celtic Frost album, to me is one of the strongest that we did as a band, because for the first time we really worked as a band. So, you know, there's many albums that have some importance to me. It's very, very, very difficult.
Can I state that the Monotheist is an album, Celtic Frost, more emotional album?
Well, you have to see that when we came back together to Monotheist, we had, of course, grown older, and versus being teenagers or in our early 20s and being very, very inexperienced, not having so much life experience. Mm-hmm. When we came together to do Monotheist, we were grown men, hopefully. And of course, the music is therefore much more solid, much more massive, more self-confident. And that's why I too think it's a very important album for Celtic Frost.
Yeah, I love that album too. It was great when I first listened to it. Well, I'm gonna give the version aqui.
O público, o Warfare Noise Project falou o seguinte: melhorar a pergunta, acho que vai ajudar. Qual dos trabalhos ele gostaria de ser lembrado?
Tá, eu já pergunto para ele aqui, só vou dar a versão em português do que ele falou ali. Para ele é muito difícil selecionar, né, qual o melhor trabalho do Celtic Frost, Hellhammer Triptych, que são 3 bandas, períodos de vida diferentes, histórias de vida, coisa e tal, né? Então, tipo, ele vê muita dificuldade nisso e ele não se sente, né, digamos assim, esqueci a palavra em português agora. Não se sente muito bem em ter que definir qual o melhor trabalho, porque são períodos diferentes de vida. Eu perguntei para ele ali, sobre o Monotheist, né, se ele é um álbum mais sentimental, né, que dá para dizer assim que é um álbum do Celtic Frost que tem mais sentimento envolvido. Ele diz que sim, porque diferente dos outros álbuns, eles eram ainda adolescentes, coisa e tal, e no Monotheist já estava funcionando mais como banda mesmo, já tinham outras visões, então ele é um álbum mais sólido, né, é um álbum que tem mais experiência de vida também, eles já estavam bem crescidos, bem experientes, e é um álbum que para ele é bem importante dentro do Celtic Frost. We have a question from the audience here. A Warfare Noise Project is asking, which of your work would you like to be remembered? Like if you have to be remembered.
Speaking of the audience, somebody just wrote, each album is its own entity and they're not meant for comparison. And I actually agree with this. Could you repeat the question again?
Okay. Thank you. Warfare Noise was asking, if you wanted to be remembered by one album, which album would it be?
You really have to know me to understand my approach. When I was younger, me and Martin, of course, we were driven like many young men with testosterone, and we wanted to prove ourselves, and we wanted to be taken serious and so on. But I've been doing this for almost 41 years now.
Yes.
And hopefully I've grown a little more mature by now, and have calmed down a little bit. And by now, I don't take myself so serious anymore, and I don't think I need to be remembered. You know, there's much more important things in the world that need to be solved. The world is at a very, very difficult stage. And of course, my music is important to me and probably also to some members of the audience. It's very important, I know. And I myself have survived only because I can listen to music, and music is like a sanctuary.
Yes.
But when it comes to my own work, I don't think my work is so important that I need to be remembered. You know, I mean, there's things that really matter in the world. The way we treat nature, the way we handle climate change, the way we treat animals and so on, you know, pollution. There's so many issues that are 10 million times more important than the best thing I've ever done. So it's not really something, I don't walk around thinking I need to have a remembrance or, you know.
Yes, great. I'm gonna talk to the audience here. Bom, ele falou ali, né, que ele não tem necessidade de ser lembrado pelos sons dele, que, tipo, tem muita mais coisa para se preocupar, que está acontecendo com os animais, com o meio ambiente, e ele não sente essa necessidade de ser lembrado. Claro que ele entende, né, que o público vai lembrar dele, que ele tem essa necessidade toda, ele e o Martin tem toda essa história juntos também, desde a adolescência, desde quando eles eram guris ali, toda aquela parte da testosterona envolvida, mas hoje ele não se leva tão a sério, assim, né, no fato de eu tenho que ser isso, eu tenho que fazer aquilo, tipo, já mudou bastante a visão de vida dele, né, ele já tá mais crescido, assim, ele também espera, assim, então, para ele tem muito mais coisa importante do que ele ser lembrado. Claro que a música para ele é importante, a música foi o que é o refúgio dele, é o que salvou ele, né, quando, na infância dele também, era onde ele se escondia, era a música, então, tipo, como ele falou no começo ali, para entender ele, tem que conhecer ele muito bem, porque, né, não é tão fácil, assim, dele se descrever, né, como eu sempre comento com todo mundo, assim. Pode perguntar, Mog.
Tom, is like a personal stuff, but it's strange. I was talking to my wife yesterday, and probably we are the same generation because of the age. And I was talking to her. Hey, listen, her name is Andrea. Andrea, listen. Have you noticed that when we are younger, we want to appear, to show up, to show off? And when you are older, you don't want to appear, you want to disappear. I didn't mean to disappear, but just the reasons are more inner. You understand? The things that are important for you are more into you. It's not like showing off. Do you agree with that?
I basically agree with that, and I think one of the problems, if you look at the history of mankind, and I'm just a musician, I'm not a historian, or but if mm-hmm. I, as an amateur, look at the history of mankind, I think many of the problems we've created on this planet are because we take ourselves so seriously. We think we are the crown of creation, everything. I try to avoid this. I really see us as a small part of a much bigger system in nature, and that really helps to put things into focus and not to go overboard with your own perception of yourself and with your perception of your importance in the world and so on. All these things that have led to so many conflicts in the world. I think if you take a more realistic stance, it really helps not just yourself but also everybody around you. And of course, I'm saying this as somebody who's made many mistakes in my life. Hopefully, I've learned a little bit from each of those mistakes.
Ok. Pessoal, eu perguntei ele se ele concordava, porque eu estava falando com minha mulher ontem, sobre quando você é mais novo, você quer muito aparecer, né? E quando você fica mais velho, você quer desaparecer. Mas não no sentido de desaparecer, de sumir. Mas você que fica mais na sua, você dá razão a outras coisas mais importantes. E ele falou que concorda, sim, que quando você fica mais velho, você começa a dar valor, que você é parte do universo, e você tem coisas mais importantes a cuidarem, ao invés de aquela coisa mais nova, que a gente entende, né, completamente, de querer aparecer, tal. Mas quando você é mais velho, você vê que o mundo é muito, muito diferente, você participa dali, você pode participar mais, de uma maneira mais eficaz.
Christian.
Okay. Talking about nature and things like that, you were pretty involved in the animal cause, and I have a kind of a particular question to you. How do you see these so-called satanic bands performing with animal heads on the stage? Just to attract attention.
I've had many discussions with black metal bands about this, and Rock Hard Germany, the magazine, even made a big interview between me and another known figure in the black metal scene, where there were 2 or 3 pages of the interview really delved into this topic. Mm-hmm. My opinion is, I of course am deeply interested in black metal, and a lot of my life has been involved in black metal. But I see all these bands presenting themselves, or most metal bands to begin with, presenting themselves as tough men, as strong men. There's leather, there's studs, there's evil gestures, and you try to project that you're a strong warrior, that you're full of courage, a macho man. But to kill an innocent little being, to me, doesn't make you a man. It's actually something very cowardish. If you go to a butchery and you buy some skulls, that doesn't make you tough. You know, it's not like you live in ancient times and had to fight for your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
fighting
it's
to get food.
I don't really get, you know, I realize, of course, the imagery of a goat and so on resembles Satan. I get that point, of course. I've studied it all my life, but
Yep.
I don't really get what it brings for a band if you go to the local butcher before a concert and you buy some animal carcass of a poor animal that was abused all of its life and that died a terrible death, and then you put it on stage. Does that make you more
Yes.
masculine? Does it make you more heavy? I don't think so. To me, true masculinity, true heaviness, true determination comes from somewhere else. You know, you
Yes.
have to earn the name warrior. You know.
Yes. Yeah, it's like one thing that I would like to add is like they are so-called Satanists, but they forget one of the commandments. We don't kill animals. We don't sacrifice animals. And
Well,
it's like,
it's if you know if you're attacked, of course you should defend yourself and so on. There's so many things to say about that. But
yeah,
if you
It's
just
another
taken
thing. Yeah.
an enslaved being that had absolutely no chance to defend themselves, a being that was likely tortured all of its life because that's how we treat animals.
yes,
That doesn't make you man. It makes you somebody who doesn't really think.
great.
But that's just my personal opinion. You know.
Yes, I respect it a lot too. Gonna give the Portuguese version here. Eu perguntei pra ele sobre as ditas bandas de black metal que fazem show com cabeças de animais, coisa e tal. Se ele acha, o que ele acha disso, né? Já que ele é uma pessoa que é bem engajada nesse quesito de defesa animal, assim, ele é um cara muito preocupado com isso, né? Então ele falou que ele acha isso meio ridículo, porque, tipo, tu não é mais homem porque tu tá colocando uma cabeça de animal ali de um pobre de um animal que foi morto de uma maneira selvagem, sofreu tortura a vida inteira. Isso não vai te fazer melhor do que ninguém também, né? É claro que ele sabe que tem toda essa ligação ali do bode com o satanismo, essas coisas, mas usar um animal que foi morto de uma maneira desleal só te faz um covarde, na opinião dele, não faz de ti um verdadeiro guerreiro mesmo. E ele fala também, claro que se, né, a gente não tá mais na época onde a gente tinha que matar para sobreviver, isso aí já passou, né? Obviamente, né, que nem eu perguntei ali para ele, que o pessoal esquece, né, de um dos mandamentos dos satanistas, né, quando o cara quer ser aí satanista, tem que saber que, né, a gente não deve matar animais, né, nem sacrificá-los, a não ser que seja para garantir a nossa segurança, né, tu vai ser atacado por um animal, tu acaba tendo que matar ele para defesa, mas, tipo, ir num abatedouro, pegar cabeças de animais para chocar o público e mostrar que tu é fodão, que tu é o machão, não agrada nem um pouco. Inclusive, ele teve uma entrevista lá que fizeram com uma banda também bem famosa, assim, deu duas páginas bem grandes, assim, deles debatendo sobre isso, né, sobre esse uso de cabeças de animais. Uma das bandas que fazia bastante isso, eu não vou mencionar, mas é uma banda da Noruega, e fazia os shows com cabeças de porcos queimando, coisa e tal, tipo, não foi muito agradável, assim. Pode fazer a pergunta, Maurício.
Tom, you can see that I am a guy that goes to history, okay? I'm the historical guy, chronologically. You talk about Grave Hill, and then you talk about Hellhammer. When was the point that you find out that Celtic Frost was the moment to create or to found Celtic Frost, and how did that happen? Eu estou perguntando, just a second, Tom. Eu estou perguntando ele como que, estou perguntando ele como acabou o Grave Hill, e depois o Hellhammer, e como que ele começou o Celtic Frost. Qual que era o momento que ele descobriu que era fé? Okay, Tom, go on.
Well, we were totally addicted to the heaviness and extremity of Hellhammer during the 2 years that Hellhammer existed, 1982 to 1984. And we practiced relentlessly. We practiced almost every single day during these 2 years. And of course, we became better musicians. That was one half of it. The other half was that Martin and I came from very different backgrounds. We besides being total heavy metal fanatics, we also liked all kinds of other music, new wave at the time, jazz music, classical music, and so on. And we loved that music so much that as we became better musicians, we also wanted to incorporate some of the other elements that we liked. We were very curious what it would sound like if these things, for example, new wave music would be combined with these extreme heavy metal things that we played. But we just had the feeling that Hellhammer was a band that was created solely for heavy metal. And we felt that the concept of Hellhammer was just too restrictive to try these things. So eventually, in May of 1984, we decided let's take basically a clean sheet of paper, which we literally did. We sat together at my place one night, and we had a clean sheet of paper. We wrote down all the things that we wanted in a band, the heaviness, the extremity of Hellhammer, but Endless Horizon artistically. We wanted to try to incorporate classical elements. We wanted to try to incorporate female voices, new wave elements, even some jazz elements. And we designed the band basically to incorporate all these things together with extreme heavy metal. And we found this is impossible to do with Hellhammer. So let's do this new band and call it a different name. A name that is not restrictive either, a name that doesn't tell you what the band sounds like. And so we settled on Celtic Frost, and on June 1st, 1984, we basically woke up in the morning with a new band.
Pessoal, ele falou que o Hellhammer ficou de 91 a 93, só que ele e o Martin Ain, eles ouviam muitas outras coisas, né? Eram bem ecléticos na música, eles resolveram montar essa nova banda que incorporava música clássica, vocais femininos, e esse todo conjunto criou essa nova banda em 94 e criou o Celtic Frost, né, que é essa coisa mais não tão restrita igual era o Hellhammer, mas uma coisa mais eclética. Oh, Tom, and you hit it, you got it, right? Do you think you got it? Are you sure that Celtic Frost was the match, was the perfect point in your career? I mean, Celtic Frost was the right thing to do at that time, or it happened at the time. You understand? I say, okay, we got it. We hit the ball.
We were actually we had worked quite hard to get a record deal in Hellhammer, and we finally got a worldwide record deal. And when we abandoned Hellhammer and formed Celtic Frost, for a while in the beginning, we were not really. We wanted to do it, but we always asked ourselves: did we do the right thing, or did we just lose the record deal? Did we alienate the record company? And it took pretty much until we had written Morbid Tales, the first Celtic Frost album, that we thought, no, this works. This was the right thing to do. The artistic heart in us told us, yeah, it was the right thing to do, but the reasonable brain said, you're doing something that's not necessarily normal here, and the record company might not understand. So yeah,
I got it. Yeah. Ele falou que artisticamente eles sabiam que eu estava com essa ideia, mas até que Morbid Tales foi feito, que deu resultado, que eles sacaram que realmente era essa ideia. Ok. Tom, hold on, because I'm going to return with other history stuff. Go ahead. Vai lá, Jorge.
Eu tenho uma dúvida que eu vou perguntar até a origem dos famosos aonde ele se influenciou. Aonde ele se influenciou, porque tem uma música do Sabbath, Rock and Roll Doctor, Black Sabbath, que tem uns Wheels of Steel do Saxon, tem uns aonde nasceu o É o meu sonho desde criança também isso.
Não, eu não perguntaria isso não, mas tudo bem.
Não esquece o The Stooges. Não esquece o The Stooges. I wanna be your dog. Ok, Tom.
Uma pergunta, vai lá, tenta aí. Tenta. Vamos ver.
Okay.
Vamos ver o que vai vir.
First of all, George was asking about the origin of where did you get it from? Because we listened to it in Black Sabbath. We listened to it when you listen to the Stooges. Like it's part of the. It's like a brand of Celtic Frost, a trademark. When you say like the first things to come to your mind is like Celtic Frost.
I don't really know. I don't really know why Celtic Frost is famous for this, or why I'm famous for this. Because if you listen to music from the 1970s to the early 1980s, you hear it quite a lot. I mean, even James Brown and a lot of funk bands used to do it. Johnny Guitar Watson, all these funk bands did it quite a lot, and also some of the rock bands. And also in the new wave of British heavy metal, I think even Paul Di'Anno does it on some of the early Iron Maiden stuff. It's not unprecedented. And for some reason, in 1984, 1985, the English press at the time started writing about me doing this. And then I became famous for it. But I'm not the inventor of this.
Tom, listen.
For me, it was always a kind of an enhancement of a powerful moment in a song. To make it even more distinctive, we just made this little decoration of ooh. It's simply, it's supposed to enhance the power. But as I said, I mean, in black music, you hear this quite a lot.
Yeah.
John,
you're gonna give the Portuguese version.
Calma aí, Maurício. Eu tenho que fazer uma translation aí.
Ok. Ele disse que não sabe, né, por que ele ficou reconhecido como o né? Tipo, a imprensa britânica que colocou isso. Mas se tu escutar James Brown se tu escutar bastante música da década de 60 e 70, tu vai achar uns lá, né? Então, tipo, ele realmente não sabe por que ele foi o cara que ficou, né, marcado pelo ali, né? Mas, tipo, se tu pegar New Wave, British Heavy Metal, tu pegar até o The Sweet, tu vai achar lá acho que na Action tem também. Então, tipo, foi mais por causa da imprensa britânica que colocou ele. Não entende, assim, tipo, por que disso, né? E por que as pessoas associam ele como o inventor do... Fala aí, Maurício.
So what is the Portuguese version? What is the Portuguese version of ooh?
It's ooh. I have
listen. You have to understand that we are mentioning this because we love this. Man, your charm was ooh. I love that. So man, what the fuck this man is saying? Ooh, but ooh is ooh. That's it. Thank you. We got it.
Ok. Jorge, tu vai perguntar ou eu posso...
Vai lá, Christian. Vai lá.
Okay, I have a curiosity to talk to you about Usurper from the USA. Once I was talking to Rick Seif, I started writing to them in 94 when they just read the demo. And once he told me that when they were going to release the album Necronemesis, you were supposed to sing some lines and the Necronemesis song, but it didn't happen, so they got King Diamond. If they invited you to take part in singing some lines, would you accept?
I'm very careful with guesting on other people's music for many reasons.
Yes.
I don't think it's necessary that everybody guests on everybody else's albums. Music is something very sacred to me, and when I write something for myself or my bands, I put so much work into it and so many thoughts that it becomes very, very private, very intimate, very personal. Mm-hmm. And so that to me, the collaborations, there's a lot of things that I don't like about it, and I have done collaborations, but it's rare. As far as I remember the story with Usurpers, I think they even asked me to co-produce some things, and I asked to listen to the material, and I couldn't really agree with the lyrics as far as I remember. It's a long time ago, and I'm saying this with all due respect. Of course, everybody is allowed to do whatever they want. Of course, I'm the last person to have a right to tell people what to write. But just for me personally, I couldn't really live with these lyrics. So the collaboration was not going to happen anyway. But as I said, I say that with all due respect.
Yes, okay, I'm gonna give the information here. Bom, eu tenho contato com o Usurper desde 94 lá, que quem sabe é uma banda total Celtic Frost, assim. E eles deram supostamente para ter uma participação do Tom Warrior, mas o Tom falou que geralmente ele não gosta muito dessas colaborações porque música para ele tem muito um lado pessoal, assim, o lado pessoal dele. Então, tipo, ele não lembra direito o que aconteceu ali, se ele até o Usurper pediu para ele produzir, ajudar a produzir o álbum, coisa e tal. Mas o fato foi que para ele as letras são muito pessoais, então, tipo, se ele ler a letra e não for muito o que ele quer, assim, ele não tem porquê tá envolvido porque, né, ele não concorda, apesar dele respeitar bastante, né, ele mantém o respeito pela banda, ele frisa bastante isso ali, que tem respeito, coisa e tal, mas ele não se sente tão, ele já fez algumas colaborações assim, mas ele não se sente tão à vontade assim, porque é o ponto de vista dele, assim, né, tipo, tem que, ele preza bastante isso. Vai lá, Jorge.
Jorge, agora seu áudio.
Audience. Maurício, lê para nós, por favor.
Okay. Tom, there's one of person of the audience is, what can we expect of the next Triptykon album? Is related to the previous, or there's some changes that you can see that are very remarkable, or just a continuation of the old ones?
Well, what do you think? You know Triptychon's music. You're not going to get a pop album, you know that. Of course, it's related. Triptykon has its sound, and of course, in a way, it's related to the previous work. But on the other hand, with Triptykon, almost every single song is a creation in itself. And when you put on a Triptykon album, you never know what the next song is going to be, and the next after that. And I would like to keep it that way. Of course, I will try to do things that we haven't done yet. But of course, I also want everything to sound like Triptykon, because I really love Triptykon sound. And to me, Triptykon sound is the culmination of all the years I spent as a musician. I worked on the sound for many years to reach that sound, that concept. And I love it, and I want to continue this. But some of the music I have created so far as sketches for the next Triptykon album, it's very dark. Some of it sounds like a combination out of Pink Floyd and Hellhammer. Some of it is just very primitive, very dark. So I think it's going to be a very dark black album.
Great. Pessoal, ele falou que as músicas, realmente, ele tenta remetê-las às anteriores, né? Mas não quer dizer que as músicas não sejam coisas novas. E que as músicas que vão vir agora são muito sombrias, e são como se fosse uma mistura de Hellhammer com Pink Floyd. Mas já sabe que vai vir coisa boa por aí, né? Mas sempre mantendo a linha Triptykon. Thank you, Tom.
Outra da audiência boa, Christian. Tá mutado, Christian. Acho que o Christian perdeu. Mutado aí.
Yeah.
Vai lá, Maurício.
Eu posso fazer para ele. Vai lá. I have another question from the audience, Tom. What do you know so far from Brazilian metal scene? But Sepultura. What else do you know?
Unfortunately, here in Switzerland, we're not very exposed to the Brazilian metal scene, which of course is a shame. I mean, I noticed the other way around. There was a time when the Swiss metal scene was not exposed to the rest of the world. If one can compare these things, I think I actually know more members of the Brazilian metal audience than I know Brazilian metal bands, because a lot of people from Brazil write to me, and also when we played there, we had quite a healthy exchange with the people. We get mail like literally every day from South America, from Brazil. Unfortunately, it's much more with the audience than with actual bands. I don't know why this is.
I see. I see. Okay, great, great. Pessoal, ele falou
it's probably something that we should address, something that we should change. I don't know. I'm quite sure that all of you could probably list a million of fantastic bands that we should hear over here.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of Brazilian bands from that area that are awesome, Tom. Very nice bands. So, pessoal, ele falou que, infelizmente, na Suíça acontece o mesmo. Ele tem muito contato com pessoas, mas as pessoas ele não tem contato com as bandas. Que é uma coisa triste, que às vezes conhece as pessoas, mas não conhece as bandas, que é muito chato não ter esse contato com outras bandas que são realmente bandas que mereceriam ser ouvidas, né? Okay.
Well, I can also tell you that a band that I've noticed, even though it's not strictly a Brazilian band, is Crypta, even though they're more of an international project.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. I have followed the path of Fernanda for a long time, and we have also communicated in the past, and I look up to her immensely, not just for her songwriting and for her performance, but also for putting women on the map in South America. And I absolutely love what Crypta have done so far, and I'm very curious where they're going to go, even though I know it's not strictly a Brazilian band.
Ok. Ele falou que ele tem muito contato com a Fernanda do Crypta, que é uma coisa que ele gosta muito, e ele tem muito contato com ela, e ele realmente é o fã da Crypta pelo que está acontecendo com elas no mundo.
Christian, outra audiência aí, por favor.
We have another question from the audience. I think you can see that. Do you plan to release another book following Are You Morbid? And are there any plans to return with Apollyon Sun?
I'm actually working on two books, and I'm in direct contact with my publisher about the next book. There's going to be a very much expanded version with much more material of my very first book, Are You Morbid? That hopefully will be finished next year. It's going to be in the same large format as the last book, Only Death is Real, and it's going to be about the main history of Celtic Frost, the classic Celtic Frost. And then, of course, I'll follow this with the break of Celtic Frost, and another book with the breakup of Celtic Frost and the story of Triptychon and Triumph of Death and all these things. So at least two more books are planned, and there's plenty of photographic material, a lot of things that haven't been seen so far that we have been managing to collect over the past few years.
Great.
As far as Apollyon Sun is concerned, I have like no plans to bring the band back, but there's a lot of unreleased material, demos, also some songs from the recording sessions for the album, and there's a good chance that there will be a reissue. My management really would like to do a reissue of the Apollyon Sun album together with all the unreleased material. So Great. we haven't decided about that yet, but that's a distinct possibility that's going to happen.
Ok, gonna talk to the audience here. Bom, nós tínhamos uma pergunta ali do Fabrício Grelet sobre plano de escrever algum livro e sobre o retorno do Apollyon Sun, e ele fala que ele tem plano para escrever 2 livros, tá? Uma versão mais estendida do Are You Morbid, né, contando mais detalhes, com mais fotos, mais rica, assim, e um segundo livro sobre como o Celtic Frost acabou, né? E como surgiu o Triptychon. Então são 2 trabalhos aí que ele tá, já tá essa versão mais nova aí do Are You Morbid já tá quase pronta, e ele tá escrevendo o outro. E quanto ao Apollyon Sun, ele fala que ele não pretende lançar nada novo, mas o manager dele tá com a possibilidade de lançar, né, os materiais antigos, porque tem demos ainda, e relançar algum outro material, assim. Eu vou só perguntar uma coisa aqui, Jorge, a respeito do Celtic Frost, né, rapidinho, 2 aqui, na verdade. Talking about Celtic Frost, it is inevitable, and I would like to know one thing. Now that you're performing with Triumph of Death, and the concerts are great, is there any chance of seeing Celtic Frost tribute performing live?
Well, you know, Hellhammer only existed for 2 years, and with that's a limited amount of music. And with Triumph of Death, we're playing that limited amount of music. But eventually, we have done that. So we have talked quite often in Triumph of Death whether it would be an idea to do, for example, the entire Morbid Tales album by Celtic Frost.
That would be great.
To to do some of the early Celtic Frost stuff. Because, of course, Triptychon plays a lot of Celtic Frost music, but Triptychon is not a Celtic Frost cover band. It also is a band that is still active, that creates new material, and we always try to make it 50% Celtic Frost, 50% Triptychon. So we all think in Triumph of Death, we think this is probably a perfect concept, this band, to maybe play Moby Tales in its entirety, things like that. I think that's probably going to happen in the future.
Oh, I hope it happens.
I have also talked to the original drummer of Celtic Frost, Reed St. Mark, who lives in America.
Great.
He's still one of my best friends, and we've talked about maybe doing 1 or 2 Celtic Frost tribute shows in memory of Martin Ain.
Great.
We haven't really finalized these plans, but maybe we'll do that one day, that we play just with ex-Celtic Frost members who were in Celtic Frost at the time, and maybe play a full Celtic Frost set that includes all the eras of Celtic Frost, and maybe play 1 or 2 festivals with this, and also record it just as a memorial to Martin Ain. We all think you cannot reform Celtic Frost ever without Martin, but we could maybe do 1 or 2 memorial shows for him.
Yes, great. I'm gonna give the Portuguese version da Brazilian audience here. Bom, falando do Triumph of Death, ali, né, do sucesso que está sendo o Triumph of Death, e se tem uma possibilidade de a gente ver o Celtic Frost, né, ele tocando Celtic Frost, tá? Ele fala que sim, pode haver uma possibilidade deles tocarem o Morbid Tales na íntegra e mais alguns outros sons do próprio Celtic Frost, né? Então, tipo, é possível que isso aconteça. O Hellhammer já é mais uma quantia limitada de música, então é mais fácil de acontecer, né? Foi mais fácil de fazer. Mas aí tem o Triptychon, que também tocava algumas músicas do Celtic Frost, mas o Triptychon, ele não é uma banda tributo, né? Ele é metade Celtic Frost, metade Triptychon, então tipo, é um meio a meio ali. Então isso seria, né, um tributo, uma homenagem ao Martin Ain, né? Ele também já falou com os ex-membros também, batera, coisa e tal, que ele ainda é bastante amigo, assim, para fazer algumas shows ao vivo, né? Então, tipo, há de se ter essa possibilidade de a gente ver aí um tributo do Triumph of Death tocando, né, o Celtic Frost live na sua íntegra, o que seria fantástico. Pode falar, Jorge?
Galera, a gente encerrou, né, o prazo aqui com o Tom. Christian agradece aí imensamente. A gente aqui está no momento ímpar, tá? Agradece muito pro Tom pela presença dele, tá? Por favor.
Okay. Tom, we are finishing with the interview. Okay. It was a great pleasure to have your presence here. Okay. I'm really pleased to talk to you, and I think the Brazilian audience also is very happy to hear news from you, from the Celtic Frost, from the books, obviously, too, because everybody likes. I hope someone gets the interest and release one of the books here in Brazil, too. And thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to us, okay?
It is really me who is thanking you. Once again, thank you for your patience, for persisting with this interview. I really appreciate it. And I can only tell you, next year there should be 1 or 2 surprises for Celtic Frost fans. There's going to be 1 or 2 releases that will please a lot of Celtic Frost fans. Maybe that's a good way to close this interview. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having me. It means a lot to me as a musician from Switzerland.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much. Momento ímpar, já podemos morrer sossegado.
Now we can die very happily.
Thank you so much.
Now we have a raffle here. We're gonna give away 3 Triptychon live CDs for the Brazilian audience.
Legal.
Okay.
Tom, thank you. Galera, obrigado. Próxima terça a gente está com o Craig Locícero do Forbidden. Acompanhe o Heavy Culture. Toque no sininho. Dá uma força para nós aí. E muito obrigado, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
are
you
the
so
guy.
much.
You are
Obrigado.
the guy. You are the guy.
Maurício, obrigado.
Okay.
Christian, obrigado.
Obrigado. Thank
Abraço.
you. Ok, um abraço. Bye bye.